Hello everybody, we are going to do a practice problem on the economic order quantity for a retailer, and these problems concern themselves with the fact that you usually get a huge discount when you buy in bulk. It's how Walmart and Costco and everybody else has operated for decades. You buy just a massive amount of inventory at any one time, and by buying in such a large quantity you get a per unit discount. You get to save on processing costs, if you will, filling out all of the paperwork, etc. You might even get a discount on shipping. So it makes it much cheaper on a per unit basis to acquire a vast amount of inventory at any one given time instead of buying repeatedly in small little increments. The problem with that is it requires a massive outlay of cash flow in the beginning. You have to buy a year's worth of inventory at a time, or 6 months worth of inventory at a time. It's not like you can turn around and sell all of that the next day. It's going to take you time to convert that asset, your inventory, into cash. And by doing so, you are giving up an opportunity. You're giving up the opportunity to use any cash flow that would not be tied up if you did not buy in such bulk for other things. And it could be something just as simple as putting it into a savings account to earn interest. So in this question that we have here, we have Glowrider, who is trying to figure out what is the economic order quantity for buying the paint that they're going to need to do custom paint jobs on cars. Our information tells us that Glowrider does these custom paint jobs on cars, and they currently order the paint that is required to provide this service on a monthly basis, but their supplier is offering them a huge discount if they make a very large purchase of paint on an annual basis. So buy a year's worth of paint ahead of time instead of buying a smaller amount each and every month. Glowrider has been and can continue to invest free cash flow in a very lucrative investment fund, and the company management is worried that making this large order is going to prevent them from not being able to do so and therefore not experience the returns. If we see in our information down here, that fund has been returning them about 14%. By tying up all that money and in making a huge annual purchase of paint, they're not going to have the free cash flow to invest as much money into the fund as they used to. So the returns on that fund is a cost of making that huge purchase. It's very relevant. It is the opportunity cost of deciding to take that decision alternative. Company management has asked the staff to perform a differential analysis, what we're going to do here, for the two different purchase alternatives in order to find out the total relevant cost of each alternative. For the purpose of this analysis, we're going to assume a few things. We are going to assume that we have sufficient storage space to handle such a large purchase. Very important. You don't want to go buy a year's worth of paint and realize that your storage facility can only handle, say, a 3-month supply. That means that you have other relevant costs that are going to come into play, like having to rent a new facility, etc. And also that they're not going to have any paint on hand at the end of the period, which is going to be important for a calculation that we're going to do in a little bit. But let's start by going through looking at our information, and then after that determining what the unit cost would be for our two different alternatives: ordering 15,000 gallons of paint monthly or ordering 180,000 gallons of paint on an annual basis. Well, we think for the year we're going to be required to buy 180,000 gallons of paint. And that means if you divide that out by 12, each month we're going to need 15,000 gallons of paint to provide our monthly services. We have been buying monthly, and normally our purchase price is $30 per gallon, but our supplier has told us that if we buy a whole year's worth in bulk at once, they'll give us 10% off of every single gallon. So we can start right there to figure out our unit cost. If we order monthly, we got to continue to pay the normal purchase price per gallon, and the normal purchase price per gallon is $30. But if we order annually, we get 10% off. So we can just take our normal price and multiply it by 1 minus our discount rate. And so over here, I math this out, our normal price is 30, and I can multiply that by 1 minus the discount that they're offering us, which is 10% off of each gallon, or in other words, we're going to pay 90%, and 90% of $30 is $27. So we'll save $3 per gallon if we buy all of this paint on an annual basis. In part 2, we're going to start by finding our average investment in inventory. And that is accounting terminology for saying this is how much money we're going to have tied up in inventory at the time that we're not selling. It's the amount of money that you're unable to make other alternative decisions, other alternative investments with, because it is tied up in inventory that's sitting on your shelves waiting to be sold. If we purchase 15,000 units monthly, then our units per each purchase is going to be 15,000. If we order annually, we're going to buy 180,000 at a time. If we order monthly, we just determined that we're going to have to pay 30 bucks a gallon. But if we order annually, we get that 10% discount, bring our unit cost, our per gallon price of acquiring this paint all the way down to 27 bucks. So if we buy 15,000 gallons of paint at $30 a piece, 15,000 times 30 means that each month we're going to have to spend $450,000 to acquire the paint that is necessary for us to provide our services. If we order 180,000 gallons at once, a whole year's supply, get that discount and only end up having to pay $27 per gallon, we're going to have to spend $4,860,000 on that purchase of just a ridiculous amount of paint. What is our average investment in inventory? It is the amount of money that you would have tied up in inventory waiting to be sold on any one given day. And it operates under the assumption that you get this, a large amount at once when you make the purchase, be it monthly or annually. And then as time goes on, you sell some of that inventory. You convert it into cash flow. Well, if you order monthly, you don't have such a big, massive amount, in this case for this company, of paint sitting around that's waiting to be sold. You wouldn't make a smaller order. You would continually during the month get a portion of it back. What I'm getting at here is the average investment in inventory is the average amount of paint that you're going to have on hand on any one given day, found by taking the average of the same two numbers, what you're going to have tied up on day one when you make the purchase versus what you're going to have at the end of the period sitting in your ending inventory. And back to our information at the top, to keep this simple, I said the company does not expect to have any paint in ending inventory. So essentially all we need to do here is find the average between our total cost of each purchase, how much inventory we're going to have on hand immediately after we make the purchase, and zero because we don't have any ending inventory. So average investment in inventory is just purchase cost plus ending inventory divided by 2. How do you find the average of any two numbers? Add them together and divide by 2. So here we've got the 450,000 plus a big fat 0 for our ending inventory divided by 2. Means we're going to have $225,000 tied up at a given time on average. We'll have $450,000 tied up on day one. We'll hopefully use some of that paint, charge people for those services, convert that asset into cash, and we'll continue to do so each and every day. And by the end of the month, we should have used all of the paint. At that point, had nothing tied up in inventory that we're not using because we're out because we have 0 ending inventory before we make our next purchase. If we order annually, same thing. We're going to take the cost of the purchase, add to it our ending inventory, which in the problem is given as 0, and divide by 2. And that comes out to $2,430,000. If we order annually, we're just going to have a significant mass of paint sitting around. And we're going to whittle away at it over the entire year, but it's not like we're even going to come close to flipping through almost $5 million of paint anytime soon. It's going to take us the full year to do so. The average amount that we have tied up, then we're going to have days for a long time where we have $4 million of inventory, $3 million of inventory sitting on our shelves that we have no intent on using at any time in the immediate future because we have so much it's going to take us forever to get through the products. We're tying up a ton of money in the discounted purchase of this huge quantity of paint that we could have used for something else. So with that, we can determine the relevant cost of our purchase alternatives. For us, we have 3 things that are very relevant because they exist in a different amount for one alternative than they do the other. Annual processing fees. We have to pay, up here, it tells us, a flat processing fee each time we make an order. It is $1,200 that we have to pay them for paperwork and maybe shipping, etc. in there. Well, if we order monthly, we got to pay this fee every single month. But if we order just once per year, we only have to pay that fee once. It's flat, which means ordering annually saves us a ton in processing fee costs. What do we pay under these 2 alternatives? Well, if we purchase annually, we got to pay that $1,200 processing fee every month, so we got to pay it 12 times during the year. We'll spend a total of $14,400 in annual processing costs. If we order just one big purchase annually, we only have to pay that $1,200 once, because we're only making one big order. Therefore, if we make the decision to continue to order monthly, as we are right now, it's going to cause us to spend $13,200 more on processing costs than we would if we make that one big annual purchase. What about the actual cost of the paint that we're acquiring? Well, we need 180,000 gallons no matter what. I mean, 180,000 here, or we can buy it in 12 chunks of 15,000. We're buying $180,000 or 180,000 gallons regardless. So if we purchase annually, that 180,000 gallons that we are going to buy are going to cost us $30 a piece. We're not getting the discount. That 180 gallons is going to cost us $5.4 million. If we order annually, we're still going to get that 180,000 gallons in our inventory, but now we're getting them at a discounted unit rate or per gallon rate of $27 per gallon. So we're saving $3 a gallon. That brings our annual purchase cost, the cost of inventory, down to $4,860,000. So again, what's the difference between our two decision alternatives? Well, if we continue to order monthly like we have, we're going to end up spending $540,000 more on the actual purchase cost of paint than we would if we got that discount by ordering annually. And this kind of makes sense. Like if you order in big, huge bulk, you're going to pay less in processing fees because you're making less orders. And you're going to hopefully get a pretty significant discount on the per unit rate of the inventory that you're acquiring. So you should be saving a bunch of money by ordering annually on the actual purchase price of your inventory. But again, the problem is you're tying up a ton of free cash flow, which means you are going to forego any returns on things you could have used that cash for otherwise. And for Glowrider, that's that investment fund where they can earn 14%. To figure out your opportunity cost in this situation, what you do is you take your average investment in inventory. And this is why we find it in the first place. So theoretically, we're operating under the assumption that yes, we're buying $450,000 worth of inventory on day one. But after, assuming we use it at a fairly regular rate, we're converting roughly $15,000 a day of that paint into service revenue for custom painting all of these vehicles, which means the revenues that we're getting from providing the services, that is our normal operating function, can then be pumped into this investment fund. So we find the average investment in inventory because it tells you how much cash you have in needed materials on hand, which you have no means of converting to revenue, which could go into your alternative in the immediate future. So we're going to take our average investment in inventory of $225,000 and multiply it by the rate of return that we are foregoing. By deciding to do what we do at all, by just deciding to buy paint even monthly, we can't put it into the investment fund. Because we can't put it into the investment fund, we're giving up $31,500 in potential returns that we could get on that investment fund if we just said instead, that $450,000, we don't need paint. I don't know how we're going to do our job function without it, but hypothetically, if we didn't, we could throw all of that into this fund and get a return. For ordering annually, we're going to take the average investment in inventory over here. That's much higher because, again, if we order annually, we have a ton of money tied up in product that we're not going to use for services anytime soon. We multiply that by the 14% rate of return on the investment, and that comes out to $340,200. So we are giving up a significantly more amount of potential returns by tying up a lot more cash flow in inventory in order to get the discount that we're going to get on the per unit purchase cost and the discount that we're going to get by not having so many processing fees. So if we continue to order monthly, this is going to come out as negative, but we are going to get $308,700 more in returns on the investment fund during the year. We're not tying up so much money, which means we can save, we can put more of our available cash flow into that and earn some returns that are hopefully going to offset the increased cost that we're going to have for ordering monthly. Well, let's figure out what one is cheaper in the long run. The total relevant costs of ordering monthly can be found by summing up the
three numbers above. So equals sum, open a parenthesis, highlight all the numbers you want to add together, close the parenthesis, and hit equals. The total relevant cost of our decision to order 15,000 gallons of paint per month is $5,445,900. The decision to order annually instead has total relevant costs of $5,201,400. And now this is the point where we know what we should be doing. Let's check to make sure our math works first. This number over here in the bottom right corner, the total difference of your relevant cost, should be equal to not just the difference between decision 1 and decision 2, in this case $244,500, but it should also be equal to the sum of the three numbers in the difference column above it. So I'll go that way too. And there you go, $244,500. What does that mean? That means that by ordering monthly, we're going to end up spending $244,500 more net of returns that we get on our investment fund to acquire paint during the period. In other words, the savings that we experience on processing fees and the savings that we experience on our annual purchase costs of acquiring paint are greater than any potential loss that we would have on funds that we could no longer put in the return. If we choose to make decision B over here, orders of $180,000 annually, we should experience $244,500 less costs net of potential investment returns. It should increase our income by $244,500 during the period. And therefore, Glow Rider should make the decision, go to their supplier and say, yep, we're going to hit you up on your deal. Please send us 180,000 gallons of paint immediately.